struggles not having an integrated identity development as well. So we'll talk at the end about how we can incorporate mask making with clients and students in different prompts, but for purposes of my study, my prompt for the students is going to be twofold. One, they're going to complete their masks with the prompt of how do you see yourself as a person and how do you see yourself as a counselor. And they are going to be given some cardboard masks. I'll have examples of what those look like for you guys. There's a couple different ways that you all could use this activity with your own clients or with your own students. I have access to students in person, so this will be done in person. They'll be given their masks, and then they will be given 180 minutes to complete this. And I was fortunate enough to receive a grant from the Association of Creativity and Counseling to fund my dissertation. So I will be able to go and purchase all the supplies for them. So that's everything that you want to make sure you have as many items that you possibly can for your clients and students to do a project like this. So they'll be getting paint, markers, lots of bling, lots of other fun things to put on there, different mediums, crayons, color pencils, things like that. So I'm going to record their process with their interview. I'm going to observe them with their mask making throughout that process. And then here on the screen, you see at the bottom some of the semi-structured interview questions that are going to follow. And then we are going to process what it was like for them to create that. And then what are the symbolic content that is important to them personally and professionally. So I like at the beginning, our individual said she would put a lot of bling on her. She would have a lot of color. There would be puzzle pieces. So those are the things that I'm paying attention to and observing with the individuals completing their masks. What are they putting on there? What colors are they choosing? What mediums are they using? And then what does that symbolic content mean for them? It's going to mean something very different for me if I were to complete that, just as it would be for each of you. And so the meaning behind what was it like for them to not only participate in this project, but how has this facilitated their identity development? And it's something that they can take with them once they have gotten that point. So I'm looking to identify the themes that are across the board with the participants and go through that process of analysis with them. Let's see. I really want to talk to you all. So who and how does my study benefit? So my hope is that this is going to expand the current research. There is a lot of research out there on creativity and expressive art use with clients and with students. As I mentioned in the beginning, this particular study has not been done with the population of practicum students in a master's program. My hope is to contribute new knowledge to counselor education, to creativity, to counseling in general. I've used this project with masks very similarly with different prompts with my own clients that I do work with, counselors in training, you yourselves that most of you mentioned being in the program. And having to have some unity of the profession and, consumers, you all are going out there and you all are providing services to your clients. And so helping you as individuals to integrate your identity and to form a professional identity development is really important so that your stakeholders and your consumers are going to benefit from this. I do have lots of future research interests. I am really hoping to expand my research into expressive arts with counselor education and mental health, writing up some original expressive arts activities that I do use in counseling training programs with students, future research on professional identity development. I have a little mini side research project that I did on that. I'm also really interested in exploring the differences between identity development in mental health and school counseling students. Does anybody have any feedback on that? I'm assuming you all are mental health counseling students that are on the call. What do you think would be some of those differences with mental health versus school counseling students?
I think one would be court ordered, compared to voluntary. If they want to come see you in school, they can, unless they've broke a rule. Okay. But I think with me, most of the times it was a difficult population because it wasn't like they chose to come to counseling. It was they were court ordered.
Sure. Mm-hmm. That's always the challenge with clients in general. Are they court ordered or are they voluntary? Mm-hmm. And with this project, as with any expressive arts project, you want to invite your client to do that. And so we'll talk a little bit about that at the end when we talk about what are some tools needed, and I'll show you guys some examples. And so this would be something that you would really want to make sure that you know your client or your student if you're teaching courses, and inviting them to do that. I know here at Purdue Northwest, we have an expressive arts program, which is how this project grew. I was a student in the same program, and I had taken those courses, and I did a similar MaskMaking project. So we have our students do a number of different projects, and one of them is a similar mask project. So, how about any other feedback? If there are differences between, again, our program here, we have a mental health track for students and then a school counseling track. One of the parts of my study is that I'm only focusing on mental health counseling students and their professional identity development while they're in practicum. So school counseling students are not a part of that because those courses are separate. So I don't know if anybody had any thoughts on maybe some differences or similarities that mental health and school counseling students go through with their identity development. All right, one of the things I can share about that, just from talking to some of our students here and at some other conferences and chatting with some colleagues too, was that the school counseling students have a little bit different process that they go through, and with their environments that they're working in being a little bit different. And I know through my research and my own experiences, part of, ACA's 2020 vision is to, have everybody in that profession come together. And so having really one central solidified, identity as a counselor, and to not have the school counselors be as separate. And so this project I'm hoping can expand to, myself doing some work or just in the field in general, others doing work with the school counseling students to be able to expand on their professional identity development. So I want to go into my next screen here just to show you all what this would look like. Can you all see that? Oops.
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Oh, now it keeps going paused. There we go. All right, so how many of you have experience with mask making or utilizing expressive arts in some fashion, whether you've participated in that as a student or if you are working with clients, doing that with clients? I know we had one person that shared that she has done this with clients with addiction. Does anybody else have any other experience?
So could you repeat the question?
Sure. I was asking if anybody has any experience utilizing mask making or any expressive arts activities. I know we had one person that shared she has utilized this with clients with addiction. So whether you yourself have participated in any arts activities or mask making, or you've utilized them with clients or students, if anybody cares to share their experience.
As a client myself, I had a box that I decorated and had to put into it things that meant something to me, scraps of clothing or fabric or rocks or whatever it may have been, and then I was to identify for the counselor what they represented.
Great. Thanks for sharing that, Eva. I appreciate that. I've had my clients do some similar activities also. Anybody else have any experience that they've participated in or have given their clients?
I used to have an art room, and I would do it in the art room with clients, and it was neat because it would take several sessions to do it. And so it was kind of fun, and to watch them go through that process as they would, develop their mask and become quite protective of their mask. And I'd have them decorate the outside with what they want the world to see, and the inside with who they really are.
Yeah, I like that. That's some of the pictures that I have at the bottom of this was that very similar prompt. So how do they see themselves as a person, and how do others see them? And I really like the fact of that they work, over time on that. And you're right, they become really protective of their masks, especially when they spend so much time on them. I have a friend that's a counselor out in Denver, and she's doing a similar project with one of her clients, and she's had her work on different masks across a period of time. So each session has been devoted to working on, one mask. And mask making with clients, it has such a rich history. Masks in general, that's one of the things I've loved about just getting this dissertation together, is looking at the history and, when did masks originate and what do they mean? And they mean so many things to different people and to different cultures, and they hold a lot of value. And so I like, you saying that your clients become really protective, because they do, that becomes a part of them, and it becomes a part of who they are and who they hope to be and what they want to see for themselves. And masks with clients they're not new. Expressive arts in general is still very up and coming in the profession of mental health counseling and in counselor education. But the overall, process of using masks came about, years ago, 50s and 60s, with many of the other people that came before us. And so, now it's becoming something that is a little bit more popular. But one of the things that you want to make sure, if you are going to facilitate this with your clients or your students, is one, you can have some cardboard masks, and we'll see what they look like here at the bottom. These actually, you can purchase them on Amazon. I know for purposes of here with our students in the program, there's different textures, there's different shapes, there's different sizes. So you really want to find out what's going to be the best fit for you. The other part that's important to that is making sure that you are giving your clients, this is also a great group activity. So if you're doing this with a group, whether it's with kids or teens, or if it's an addictions group, you want to make sure that everybody is getting the same mask and that they're all getting that blank slate to start with. So Amazon's great because you can get these in bulk. If you have local art stores, I know we have one here. They also sell those too, so you can do some investigating on what would be good for you. Paper mache is also another option as well for the mask, or worksheets. And so there's a lot of great worksheets out there that just have outlines, face outlines that you could do. So if funds are limited, or if you're asking your clients to participate in this, and maybe, obviously they are not able to go out and purchase some of these things, or your office isn't, then just printing worksheets off with, a mask or a blank face outline is something that's also doable too. Supplies, I mentioned, you want to make sure that you have plenty of different supplies, paint, lots of different colors, of course, paintbrushes, chalk and oil pastels, and then additional items, which could be crayons, color pencils, lots of bling, lots of different items for them to decorate their masks. So that could be puzzle pieces, it could be collage pieces, anything like that they are able to work on. And you are able to glitter. That's been really popular. You'll see on some of the masks down here. And then you can do a prompt of your choosing. So the prompt that I've had my clients participate in, and the students here participate in, is how do they see themselves as a person, and how do they think others see them? I know some of you shared, very similar prompts as well. So, how do they see the world? How does the world see them? It could be whatever that prompt is that you are looking for the client. You can have them complete this over a number of sessions. If you have them complete this in one session or one class period, if it's students, you want to make sure that you give them adequate time to do that. If you are working in a school setting, I know that our school counseling students have had really good success with the students that they've done this project with. They were fortunate enough to have enough space to complete this, or they're just traveling with their items back and forth, but making sure that your client or your student is able to complete whatever part of that you want them to in the session, that you keep it if they're going to come back and complete that, making sure they have enough time. And then adequate time to process the masks. So especially with your clients, you want to make sure that, just as I'm doing with the students with the project, you want to make sure that you have enough time to observe their mask making process, and then really spend some time with them on the reasoning and the meaning behind the colors they chose. How did they make those masks, where they put those different items, anything that was, drawn on there, glued on there, even their choice of medium. So we all, I think, in some way or another, whether we engage in different types of expressive arts activities, we like certain things that we go to with those mediums. You'll have clients and students that are more drawn to painting, or some that want to get a little bit less messy, so they'll have some chalk or oil pastels in there. That's why you really want them to have as many items as possible to choose from. And then additional questions to process. So back in my presentation, I have a lot of follow-up questions for my students that are going to participate in the project. And so making sure that you are having enough questions to process that with your client or your student. So here's some examples of what potentially could look like if you are going to do this project. So all of these examples on here, actually a couple of them I did myself as a student. I still have them. This one over here was one that I completed back in the day when I was a master's student. Our program here for our art classes also has this project done in pairs. So we have the class of the art students will pair up. We as the instructors, we pair them up. We're very purposeful in that aspect. We'll pair them up and we'll have them make a mask for each other based on them interviewing each other, spending some time talking. And it's really amazing to see how both of those turn out. This is another one that a student completed, how they see themselves and how they think others see them. So in this case, this actually the one I did and then this individual completed, we just used the front. So we actually did not utilize the inside part of the mask for that project. Same thing with this student. This was one that they completed. You'll notice a little bit differences with the masks as well. These two on the top here are the cardboard ones that you can get at local art stores or that are on Amazon. This one also is a plastic material. These work really well with lots of different types of mediums. The cardboard ones, I prefer the cardboard ones, but these are also ones that work really well. For those of you that like lots of bling and glitter, here is one of those. One of the individual students completed this. Again, she didn't utilize the inside part of this mask, but she did the outside. And then her partner did this one for her, which I thought was really great. When you look at both of them, the similarities in the colors, they both did a line down the front of their mask and completed two different faces. And so the amount of information that they were able to gain from each other in a really short amount of time, and then being able to make those masks and then the colors that they chose. So those are some examples of, again, being done with students. I wasn't bringing any in from the clients. They're at my office and I hadn't talked to them about permission to bring those in, but clients doing this would look very similarly as well. So are there any thoughts or questions or comments before I just give you guys some wrap-up questions and things to think about?
I was wondering how you interpret what you're seeing, and what if the client sees something different in their mask or intended to express something different?
That's a really great question. And so I'll give you a couple different parts of that answer. So as the therapist working with my clients, or if I'm working with students, my job is not to interpret that, because that is their mask. And so what they choose as far as colors, mediums, and how they put that together, we go through and we have that processing together. So as I'm watching them put those together and the items that they're choosing and the colors that they're choosing, I am going through and I'm thinking about, more of why are they choosing this? What does this color mean to them? I'm paying attention to things like, are they using the inside part? Are they splitting the face, down the middle? Things like the one at the bottom here that would be very more obvious with the question mark, not really sure who one is. So my job as a clinician and then working with students is not to have that interpretation. So one, that's a big part of my study. I'm not interpreting. I'm getting that feedback from the students through that interview process for the dissertation work on what all of this means to them. I chose not to do any interpretive, analysis for that because everybody's experience is different. And so each of those items means very different things than it would mean for me or for the other person that's doing the mask. And the same thing with the client. So I might prompt them with some questions because I might see some things. For instance, this one over here that I did as a student, the eyes were colored in with a gold. So if a client isn't addressing that and processing, I might ask them or point out and say, I noticed that the eyes are colored in with like a really shimmery gold color. Can you tell me more about that? What does the color mean? Was there a reason that you chose that color? I've had clients that, leave one eye open and then color in one, the other one. And so then I would ask them, what does that mean, for you that you left this one open versus, this one that's colored in. So it's all about the questions and then how you process with them. Part of that is, it's not our mask. And so we have a very different interpretation of what some of that might mean. We don't want to give that interpretation to the client if that's not what is something that they're seeing. And so we want to be really cautious with that. And that's why I said, ask lots of lots of additional questions during processing so that, you can better understand that client. If some of you were to complete either one of these masks, or even now looking at those two, or even some of these, you're probably thinking very different things as far as why the colors were chosen, why there's yellow and green on one side and purple on the other side. So it's all about making sure that you ask them the appropriate questions for them to give you that meaning.
Thank you. And what would happen if you had a client who was resistant to discussing what they put on their mask? How would you proceed?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things that I do and that you all should do with your clients too is to approach this really cautiously. One, you want to make sure that you understand the project that you are having them engage in so that you can explain that to them. So when I meet a new client, I always talk about the fact that I do expressive artworks with clients, and I name off some of those things that I do, which includes mask making. The clients like to see them too. I have some on the wall with some permission from clients, of course, that they can see what that looks like. So the first step is you always want to invite your client or your student to do a project like this. And it's not something that you want to just bring up and say, hey, let's do this. I always do it at least a session or two before, so that if they have any apprehension, then that can be discussed. If you are going through the project and you have a client that's completed this, but they are resistant to processing that, then that would be something I would take really slowly. I would explore that resistance, especially if you have a client that's really excited about this project and has said, yeah, let's do this. And, maybe it's something you've worked on with them over time. So I would process that resistance with them, and then I would go from there to look at, okay, what can I do to help them? I would not push them. I'm not going to force them to do that. It might be at that point, one, I would save that mask. I wouldn't let them take it home. I would keep it in the office for safety, because if they're not ready to process what's going on with it in session, then I'm certainly not letting them take that home with them, because there is an emotional safety that's there. So then we could explore that, down the road, depending on what their, what their responses are to even processing that resistance. So.
Thank you, Jill.
You're welcome. What other thoughts, feelings, or questions do you guys have about these masks, or just anything in general utilizing this with clients and students?
I'm sorry, maybe I missed this, but are there any presenting questions or presenting problems that the client brings to you that would make you think, okay, making a mask would be a really good idea?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually thought about this yesterday with one of my new clients that I had. So one of the things that I would do is look for various keywords. And so our intake process at my office is, one, it's very lengthy, and there's a lot of assessments that our clients go through. So those are some key indicators for me. this week, I'll share, I've had a lot of boys come in for session, teenagers, so 12 and 13. So I think I saw 4 this week that are new to therapy. And there's already a couple that I've identified that I really want to do this project with. One of the reasons is they're really struggling with figuring out who they are as they're, new teenagers. A lot of them are approaching coming into 8th grade. So they're really nervous about transitioning to 8th grade, for a couple of them, they're moving schools. So transitioning to a new school. I have one that recently moved. So I think that those were some key indicators for me that they feel really lost. A couple of them have identified that. And so they don't really know where their place is in the family. So those would be things that would, kind of clue you into, hey, this would be a really great project. I have clients that have extensive trauma that I work with, and this project at some point along the way is one that I've done with them so that they can work on integrating themselves and unmasking the trauma and going through the process of that, reintegrating themselves and the healing process. So that would be one. Addictions is a great population to utilize this with. We had one of our alumni who works in an inpatient addictions unit, and she does this project with a group of individuals, and she does this at the end of their stay there, so they can look at the person that they were before during the addiction cycle and who the person is now that they are newly sober and going to be reintegrating back into society. So those would be some pretty key indicators that would be helpful for you to look at.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. It's very helpful.
When making the mask, do you do, for instance, can you use objects like feathers or little pebbles or sand?
Yep, absolutely. These, for the examples, they don't, you can see on this one, the glitter is really popular with a lot of our master students who take the art courses and with clients. So that would be one thing that if you are working with students in an office or in a school setting, making sure that you have the adequate space for them to complete those. And, looking at like kind of where all the glitter is going, just clean up too. So you can see on here, there's a little swirls. So these were some stickers that they placed on here. And then of course the glitter. And then on this one, there's some little beads and again, more glitter. But yeah, so what I'm doing for the students for my study is I've purchased just a ton of different items. I have pipe cleaners, foam pieces, feathers, pebbles, anything like that they are able to either stick on or glue on that they can use for their mask. So you want to make sure that you have lots of that. Previous masks that I've had clients do or students do, they've included adding hair. They've put lots of feathers on there. I've had a student that has, really recreated her entire face. She put glasses, she put her ears with earrings. So your clients and students will get really creative with this. And so you don't want a client or student to say, hey, do you have any feathers or anything like this that I can put on here? And then you don't have that. So.
I have one last question.
Yeah, sure, I love questions.
While they are making the mask,
mm-hmm.
Do you do any processing with them as they are making it, or is it all just observing and then processing afterwards?
Yeah, that's a really great question. It depends on the client and the student. So purposes of dissertation for my study, I am not going to be processing with them while they are working on that. They will each get their own individual rooms. That audiovisual equipment will be used to observe that process, and then I will interview them afterwards. If you are utilizing this in a group setting, my experience has been traditionally everybody in the group at some point they're quiet, they're working on their masks, and then eventually, you know, they're starting to talk and they're looking at each other's masks. I walk around and I see what they're doing and how they're, you know, interacting with each other. Again, what items they're choosing to put on that mask. And then depending on what the prompt is for the group and my interaction with them, I might engage them in conversation for that. Kids want to talk. So if kids are utilizing this project, they want to talk to you while they're doing it. So I will engage in conversation with them about the items that they're choosing. You know, kids are not as comfortable as some of the adults with the silence. A lot of you might know adults are not very comfortable with that either. But I also always invite them that it's their choice, that we can engage in conversation and simultaneous process while they're doing that. Or if they would prefer, you know, I might put on some meditation music if they just want to do this in a quiet setting, and then we can talk about that afterwards. So, and I let them know that if they choose that option, you know, I will be just observing what they're doing and, you know, items that they're picking, so that they're not, you know, kind of looking at me saying, hey, what, you know, you're staring at me. So I'm paying attention to what they're going to do. So.
Thank you, Jill. I just want to inform you we only have 7 minutes left.
Okay.
So if anybody else has questions, it's time to get them in now.
Yeah. Any last questions, comments, anything that...
All right, one second.
Erica, did you have a question or comment?
Hello?
Yep, I can hear
Sorry.
you.
I'm sorry. I think I was on mute. I don't know. This is my first time doing online. I know no other questions for me.
Okay. I have placed the link to how to obtain CE credits for this, you know, the MBCC CE credits. It is in the chat box.
Okay.
And for the students of the Chicago School, it is also in the online advising forum in the announcement section.
Okay. Is there a way, if I can put in the chat box in here, if you all would like a copy of any of the presentations or materials, I'm happy to send that to you. So I can...
Jill, we can post it in our advising forum. So if you'll just send it to Jen Tooth, the student representative, we'll get it posted for you.
Okay, awesome.
And thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to share my project with you all and mask making and expressive artworks. I hope that this has prompted some of you to think about just expressive arts and mask making a little bit differently. And I hope that you are able to do some of this work with your future clients and students.
Thank you, Jill, for presenting and being here with us.
Thank you so much. You guys enjoy the rest of your day and weekend.
Erica Turner said, awesome, thank you. And Alexa Fleming said, thanks. Ginger said, great presentation and thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you guys so much. Thanks for participating.
If nobody has anything else, then I will end the meeting.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Eve, so much.
You're more than welcome.